Hello and welcome to Premodern Merfolk, the tempo deck that uses Lord of Atlantis and other merfolks to make a synergistic beatdown plan. It's also worth noting that Lord of Atlantis has been errated since the old days, so now it's a merfolk and it pumps other merfolks instead of all merfolks. So effectively it means if we have two in play, they can pump each other. So there's not actually that many merfolk in Premodern. We do have some good ones though. We have Merfolk Looter, which is great, and Waterfront Bouncer, which has been errated to be a merfolk. That's great for this tempo game plan that we're going for. And we have some other cards that work well with it that we'll get to in a minute. The other merfolk are some kind of looting effects. We also have some 1-drops and Rootwater Diver, which can return artifacts, which will come up later as you'll see. Rootwater Thief and the Illusionist, they don't really see play, but they're kind of interesting ones that I thought I would include in the video. It's also worth noting that these decks do commonly splash green for Gaia's Skyfolk and Quirion Dryad, which can get very, very big in this deck. They don't all splash green, but it is definitely the most common splash colour. So for disruption, we're playing 4 Winter Orbs. This goes perfectly with our game plan of playing a synergistic clock and then locking opponents down. This is obviously really good against mid-range and control decks and really just helps us put the pressure on. We also have counter spells and free spells, so being able to return islands to our hand obviously works really well, also with Waterfront Bouncer and with Foil. We can use all of these to kind of synergize together. Effectively, the game plan is we're tapping out our mana, but we're still able to hold up some counter spells or other stuff to respond. So being a heavy blue deck means we just need islands, and there's a whole lot of non-basic lands we could play. You could play Fairy Conclave, Wasteland, Mishra's Factory, whatever you like. Also the sideboard, so traditionally you definitely want something for against red decks. You definitely want a Null and Tormod's Crypt and something against elves. Blue has a lot of options, so there's a lot of things to choose from. There's also a lot of options for the main deck. So all of these cards on screen, they do see play in different kind of decks. Counterspell is definitely the most common, and actually that could have been in the other section of the video. For splashes, again, green is by far the most common splash, but it's not the only way. So I've also seen some very spicy lists that throw the Dreadnought combo in there. Stifle works excellently with our game plan of trying to tempo them out, as we can use it to counter fetch land abilities, and Dreadnought can really speed up our clock and is great under a Winter Orb. It's also worth noting that those other merfolks I showed you earlier also work well with Dreadnought, because we can return it if it dies to them countering the combo or something, or we can use the phasing merfolk to phase it out. When playing this deck, we essentially just want to build up our synergistic clock and then start disrupting them with things like Winter Orb, Daze, Waterfront Bouncer, just putting their game plan back. The idea is that our threats are more mana efficient than theirs, and when playing against it, of course, red blasts are very good. Efficient removal is very good, especially any kind of repeated removal. Also, some enchantments can be a problem for mono blue once they're in play, like Oath of Druids is going to be very difficult to beat when it's in play. So this deck is a tempo deck, meaning it's kind of an aggro-y sort of control-y deck. Against control decks, we're going to absolutely dominate them with our aggressive starts backed up by counter magic. Against aggro decks, it's going to be much more difficult because their creatures in general are probably going to be better than ours. So the strengths of the deck, it's fun, it's cheap, it's a control killer, and it's fairly intuitive to play. However, it is very fragile. It does rely on lords a bit, and aggro decks can just run us over. This is a fun deck, but I don't really think it's a tier 1 deck, but you know, it's a classic deck. So here's an example list, and as always, I do recommend you check out TC decks. If you like this video, please do like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.